This conference will now be recorded.
So in the last class, we have seen about your selection screen validations and interactions. In that, we have seen about your at selection screen on field and at selection screen on value request, and at selection screen on help request. So at selection screen on field and at selection screen are mainly used for validating single field in the is used to validate the fields which are there in the selection screen. So on which table you need to do your validations, on which tables we need to do your validations, we always need to do the validations on the domain, on the domain on the value table which is maintained in the domain, on the value table, value table which is maintained in the domain. So this is what we have to always remember. Always remember this when you want to do any validations. You have to always do the validations on the domain, on the value table which has been maintained. If the value table is not maintained, for suppose if the value table is not maintained, then we need to check check the search help. So what is a search help that has been assigned? What is a search help that has been assigned? In that search help, go ahead and find out the table which is there in that. So with that table, we have to write down the validation. If the search help is not assigned, then we need to check on the foreign key table. Foreign key table. So these are the three things. If the foreign key table is also not assigned for that particular field, then you need to ask your functional on which table we have to go ahead and write our validations. Mostly in SAP, 95% 95% for all the domains, there will be a value table. There will be a value table for sure. You will be seeing it. So if not, you have to go ahead and check these things. Excuse me. Okay, so this is what. Now, what is the issue between on selection screen field? The issue is whenever there is an error, all the fields will go into a gray out. To avoid that, we will be writing with at selection screen. Now at selection screen on value request, which is used for your F1 help, whereas at selection screen on help request, which is sorry, this is for F4 help, F4 help, and this is for your F1 help. Now the next thing is at selection screen output. So at selection screen output, output. So what is the purpose of this one? So at selection screen output. So this is used to do the interactions in the selection screen. Based upon my interaction, the selection screen has to be dynamically changed. The selection screen has to be dynamically changed. For example, so in order to work with that, we have the checkboxes, the checkbox, the radio buttons, and the list box. The list box. So list box I'm not going to cover because majorly we are not getting any requirements on the list box, but you can go ahead and find out how to work with your list box. Okay, I'm going to cover only the checkboxes and the radio buttons. You go ahead and check what is the importance of the list box. How can we dynamically change the selection screen with the help of your list box. The coding wise is the same, but instead of radio buttons and checkboxes, we will be using that as your list box. Okay, so now, so the check boxes. So now coming to this checkboxes and radio button. So when you provide a checkbox, you can go ahead and select that checkbox, or when you provide a radio button, you can go ahead and select that radio button. In the same way, when you provide a list box, you will be finding out the list. The list, in that you can select whatever the value you want. So that is called as this one. So now based upon your selection, now you are going to interact. My screen has to be dynamically changed. Let's say for example, I have a radio button called as your I have a radio button called as your sales orders, and I have a radio button called as your purchase orders. Now, when I select the sales orders, I want the sales order selection screen. The sales order selection screen. When I select the purchase order, I want the purchase order selection screen values. The purchase order selection screen values. So like this. So in if this is the format, so these are two checkboxes, or these are two radio buttons. So when I selected this, these fields has to be shown up in your selection screen. When I selected this, these fields has to be shown up in your selection screen. So this is what the at selection screen output will be used. So before that, let me see how can we work with the how to work with the radio buttons and the checkboxes. How can you work with your radio buttons and checkboxes? Let me log on to my system. So let me connect to now let me go to SC38. So I'm just going to say ZR7AM CB and RP checkboxes and radio buttons. So example program on the checkboxes and the radio buttons. Now I'm going to say this as the executable program, and now let me click on save. I'm going to save, assign that package as well as our TR. Now I'm going to say, so from here onwards, I'm going to use for every program as no standard page heading. We have already seen that. So line count you will be never using going forward. Going forward, you will be never using, because we will be using something called as ALVs and oops containers and everything. In that, we don't need to use of your line count. So I'm not going to use any line count over there. Now, the next thing, so how can you define your parameters and your checkboxes? So sorry, how can you define your checkboxes and radio buttons? Now I'm going to tell you about your checkboxes. So in order to define your checkboxes, you will just say parameter. So you will be writing this as p underscore ch. So if you have multiple 1 2 3, so ch stands for your checkbox. Some people will write it as cb also, don't get confused. So CH or CB both are used for your checkboxes. So as checkbox, if it is a list box, you will be just saying this as your list box. So that's it. So I'm going to say this as my checkbox. And now I'm going to say P underscore CH2 as the checkbox. So now how many checkboxes I have created? I have created two checkboxes. Now, if I want to pass one default value, so that means automatically system has to be selected. So how can you do that? With the help of your event initialization, the same thing. So I'll just say p underscore ch1 is equal to x. So X is nothing but you have selected. In SAP, for X, you have an ABAP Boolean values, so which will starts with ABAP true and ABAP false. ABAP true is nothing but your X. Remember that. ABAP true is nothing but your X, and ABAP false is nothing but your space. Now, as of now, I have selected this one. Now, when I do my pretty printer, when I activate this code, now when I click on execute, see here, automatically it has been selected. When I remove this code, let me remove this code too. Now, when I say activate, now when I click on execute, now you have to select it, whatever the checkboxes you want. Which checkbox you want, you have to select that checkbox. Now, let me go here and let me activate. So either you can pass your initialization over here, or you can say that default equal to X. So here you can't able to write your ABAP true. You have to maintain only in your single quotations of X. Single quotations, capital X. Remember that this is capital X, not a small x. So either you can maintain that in initialization, or you can maintain with the help of your default value. Now when I say, see here, automatically it has selected. Now my requirement is my requirement is when I selected, when I select p underscore ch1, I need p underscore ch1 is selected, and when I select p underscore ch2, then I need the output as, then I need the output as p underscore ch2 is selected. If both are not selected, if both are not selected, and if both are selected, then I need an error message. I need an error message. I need a error message. So message, so that is you cannot select both the items. You cannot select both the items, or you select kindly one item only, or kindly one checkbox only. That is a message I want to populate. So you can do it that with your new syntax as well as your old syntax. How can you do it with your old syntax? So now I'm going to do that with my old syntax, and I'm going to showcase that in my new syntax. If, so I'm just saying this as start of selection. If p underscore ch1 is equal to, you can say this as above true, or you can also write this as is not initial. Is not initial means contains value. Is initial is nothing but it doesn't contains value. If p underscore ch1 is initial and not initial, and p underscore ch2 is not initial, so I'm just writing both the conditions. Or if p underscore ch1 is initial and p underscore ch2 is initial. So I'm just going to write both the conditions. So if both are not initial or both are initial, I would just say write select only one checkbox. Select only one checkbox. Select only one checkbox. And the same way, else if p underscore ch1 is not initial, then I'm going to say write p underscore ch1 is selected. See, I'm just going to write with this. Now, else if p underscore ch2 is not initial, so I'll just say write p underscore ch2 is selected. P underscore ch2 is selected. So that's it, simple. So you have to just write with this. Now if I go ahead and do my pretty printer and let's say activate the code, and now when I click on execute and when I say execute, this one p underscore ch1 is selected. Now when I remove this and when I execute this one, p underscore ch2 is selected. If I click on both, see here, select only one checkbox. If I didn't select anyone, so see here, select only one checkbox. So all my criteria has been met. In the same way, how can you go ahead and write that with your new syntax? I'm just going to say write condition hash when when p underscore ch1 is not initial and p underscore ch2 is not initial, or I'm just going to write everything in one statement. P underscore ch1 is initial and P underscore ch2 is initial. Then what I need to have, then I would say select only one checkbox. Select only one checkbox. See, and when P underscore ch1 is equal to, okay, is not initial, sorry, okay, is not initial, uh, then then p underscore ch1 is selected. Now the next one, when p underscore ch2 is not initial, so then p underscore ch2 is selected. P underscore ch2 is selected. So that's it. So simple. So now when I do my pretty printer, okay, sorry, pretty printer. So that's it. Now see here, with one single statement also I can complete this everything. Now if I go ahead and remove this, when I say activate this one and when I click on execute, now see here the same thing will come up. If both are selected, I can see the same output. So this is how you can go ahead and write multiple conditions with the help of your conditional statement. Now the next thing, so now, but when you're writing with your radio, so in the checkboxes you have to provide, you have to select it. So but so you can select multiple, but whereas in the radio buttons you have an option to select only one single. How can you define your radio buttons? So if I want to define my radio buttons, so parameters p underscore rb. So radio button one, so radio button group. So whenever you are creating any radio buttons in your selection screen, you need to assign to a group. To which group it has to be? To which group it has to be? So I'm going to say any name. So A. I'm just going to say this as, sorry, I'm just going to say this as your RB1. So like that you have to assign or RB. So now when I go ahead and say P underscore RB2 radio button group RB. So every radio button has to be assigned to your radio button group. Then only the radio buttons will work. So if I say this as default equal to X, so this will be get selected. If you have not provided this one also, by this you can see here automatically one radio button will be get selected. One radio button will be get selected. Now if I go ahead and write my query, so here you can't able to write, you can't able to select multiple. When I say execute, activate, and when I say execute, so you can either select this or you can able to select this. You can't able to select multiple radio buttons. So that's an advantage when you go ahead with your radio buttons. So you have to see which one you are going to select. So usually, mostly, you will be we will be writing the code on your radio buttons only, but there are some people who will also write on the checkboxes. If you are writing on the checkboxes, the code will be gets increased. If you are not writing on the checkboxes, the code will be gets reduced. That's it. So based upon the requirements, if they say I need to select two things on your selection screen, then go ahead with your checkboxes. So only one thing has to be get selected, then you have to go ahead and use your radio buttons. Then you have to go ahead and use your radio buttons. So this is how you have to classify your radio buttons as well as your checkboxes. Now when I say this one, so you'll just say right, I'm just going with switch. So right now I'm going to have with the switch, and then I'm going to say this as above true, above true, which one you have selected when p underscore rb1. So when p underscore rb1, then it is uh, radio button 1 is selected. Radio button 1 is selected. When p underscore rb2, then radio button 2 is selected. See, I just uses the case statement. I just uses the case statement. So whichever statement you want, you can go ahead and use that. If you want to go ahead and use your conditional operator, you can use that. Or if you want to go ahead and use your uh, no, this is right only. P underscore is, I have done case above to, we can't write like this. Okay. So in the new syntaxes, we can't able to write like this. Okay. Okay. I need to go ahead with my old syntax only. So I need to go ahead with my old syntax. So case on above true, case on above true, case on above true. So when p underscore rb1, p underscore rb1, then I'm going to say write radio button 1 is rb1 is selected. I'll just simply write this, rb1 is selected when p underscore rb2, write rb2 is selected. So here you have to provide only the value, and here you have to use the compare to operator. So I have tried to use in a different way, so that is not working over in this, but the 750 syntax is the 755. So ABAP stack 755, from there you can able to use this one also, but here our system is downgraded version, you can't able to use that one. Now when I click on check, no issues at all. When I say activate this one, it will be gets active. I'll just keep a breakpoint on this when I go here. So which one it has been selected? So case underscore rb1, see here, by default automatically rb1 is selected. Now when I say this as execute, you will be getting the output rb1 is selected. When I select this one, I'm going to get my rb2, my rb2. So this is how you have to use your checkboxes and you have to use your radio buttons. Now my requirement is, so now let's go ahead and see the last one at selection screen output. Now here we have just uses our selection screen and we have identified which one I have, sorry, which radio button I'm selecting, I'm getting that output. Now when I selected this output, so my requirement, I'll just tell you my requirement. So requirement. So I have four selection screen, fields. One is the sales order number, and the second one is the sales order uh, type. The, the third one is purchase order number, and then purchase order type. Purchase order type. And I also need two radio buttons. Two radio buttons. Two radio buttons. When the first radio button is the sales orders details, sales order details, and the second radio button is your purchase order details. The sales order details as well as your purchase order details. So this is what, when I select this sales order details, I don't, so the system should not allow you to pass the values in your purchase order number and purchase order type. That means these has to be go to your gray out. So you can't able to pass. When I select the purchase order details, the sales order number and sales order type has to be go to your gray out. So how can you do that? In order to do this type of interactions, or to in order to change the selection screen dynamically, we will be using an event called as at selection screen output. This is the most important, because almost if you are doing reporting in SAP ABAP, and let's say for example, if you have 10 reporting, out of which 6 reports will uses this concept, or 5 reports will uses this concept. 5 reports you will uses this concept. So usually how you will be getting, so let's say for example, I have an interface where I need to transfer the data to some third party system. So now before I transferring the data to my third party system, and let's say, so I just want to have my test and I want to transfer. So these are the two buttons. So when I click on the test, it has to just display the data. It has to just display the data for our validation, whether the data is exactly the same or not. Or I can say this as simulate. Simulate. So you're just simulating the data to see whether it is working or not. Now when I say click on transfer, it has to transfer the data. It has to transfer the data to my third party system. Whenever I want to transfer, let's say in that transfer, when I click on this transfer, I need to get another 3 more radio buttons. One is to Salesforce, or one is to email, or one is to, okay, one is with the fax, one is with email, or one is with your print. So whichever it is. So when I click on fax, it has to open the fax number and you have to enter the fax. When I click on email, it has to open the email where you have to provide your email. When I click on print, it has to directly connect to the printer and it has to take out the print. So like that. So this is how the designs will be, which you will be getting in your SAP. So in those cases, you have to always use your at selection screen output. At selection screen output. Now let me go ahead and see that program. How can we work with that? Now I'm just going to create one program, SE38 GR7AM at selection screen output. Output example. Now I'm going to say at selection screen output example. I'm going to take this as executable program and I'm going to save that in your package as well as in my TR. So now I'm going to take this as no standard page heading, no standard page heading. So now let me go ahead and create parameters p underscore rb1, p underscore rb1 as the radio button group rb, and then p underscore rb2, p underscore rb2 radio button group rb. So two radio buttons I have created, and now I need to create four p underscore vbeln type VBELN underscore VA, and then P underscore AUA RT type VBAK hyphen AUA RT. Now, the next one, P underscore EBELN type EKKO hyphen EBELN, and next P underscore BSART type EKKO hyphen BSART. Now, I'm just going to do my pretty printer. Let me click on check to see if there are any issues. No issues. Let me activate this one. Now, when I say so see here, you got this. Now, when I select this one, these two has to be gone to your gray out. When I select this one, these two values has to be gone to your gray out. See, by you know it what is VBLN and AUART. So I don't know whether I have covered this concept or not. So how can you provide the text for this parameters as well as your radio buttons? So in order to do that, you need to click on text elements, and you have to select your selection text. So a underscore, if you want, you can just go ahead and give your data reference directly. It will get from your data reference. So from the data element, so in the data element, you will be maintaining the what you will be maintaining the field labels. You know the concept of field labels, right? From those field labels, these values will come up. Remember that from those field labels, these values will get come up, or these values will auto populated when you select your data reference. So now RB1 is the sales order details, and RB2 is your purchase order details. The sales order details and purchase order details. I'll just go ahead and activate this one. Let me come back and let's activate the program too one more time. Now when I click on execute, see here, automatically those values will come up. Now my requirement is when I select this one, this has to be gone out. When I select this one, this has to be go out. So in order to do that, so for every field, in order to change the field properties, you have to assign something called as your modification identifier. How you want to modify your field? So you have to provide your modification identifier. So you can just say any name, you can just provide it over here also. So I'm just going to say, because these two are belongs to one particular thing and these two are belongs to one particular thing. So that's the reason I've assigned the same identifier. Now for these two, I'm going to assign one more identifier, BBB, and then modification identifier as BBB. So that's the one I have just provided in under your classical reports too. So if I scroll down at the last, you can able to see that one. See here, modification identifier. So modification identifier. Now the next thing. So what I need to do at selection screen output, at selection screen output. So this is the one. So now how can we know? So which radio button it has been selected? Now I'm going to take case above true, when P underscore RB1 and P underscore RB2. Now, so remember this, the selection screen is also an internal table with header line. With header line. I have already told you the concept of this one. The same variable will be used as your internal table as well as your work area. The selection screen is also an internal table. So now P underscore RB1. So what you need to do, you need to loop your internal table and you have to change the properties of your field. So how can you do that? Loop at screen. Loop at screen. So it's a internal table with header line. So I'm not going to provide any variable. So now in this, if screen hyphen group, if screen hyphen group, in this you will be providing your identifier. I'm just going to say here it has BBB. When it is BBB, I just want this to be gets gray out. So then I'm going to say this as input, sorry, screen hyphen input. So you will be having the properties of your screen hyphen your input. Input is equal to whether you want to provide this as whether you want to provide the value or not. So you have to use your binary digit concept. You have to use your binary digit concept, and then you just go ahead and say modify screen. That's it. So you this is how you have to do it. Now in a same way, when I have going to selected this one, the copy this entire thing and paste it over here, and I'm going to select this as AAA. So now when I go ahead and do my pretty printer, and now when I click on check, no issues will come up. Now which radio button it has to be automatically defaulted. So I want to select my radio button RB1, or I want to select my radio button RB2. So I'm going to say this as, let's say, default equal to X, or you can write down in your initialization too. When I activate this one, now when I put a breakpoint over here, when I click on execute, see here automatically my breakpoint has been triggered, F5. So it has loop your screen. When I say F8, see here automatically it has changed it. When I click on sales order, see it is not changing. It is not changing the thing. It is not triggering the at selection screen output. In order to know the system, which one, or in order to know the at selection screen output, which radio button it has to be triggered, you need to provide something called as your user command. So user command will tell us which button you have selected, and you have to say this as ucom. So there is some system variable called as ucom, which will tell us which radio button or which checkbox you have been selected on at selection screen output. Now when I say this as activate, so this user command you have to provide it on your first radio button only. You should not provide to on your second radio button. Remember that one. You have to provide on your first radio button only. Now activate this one. Now when I click on execute, now when I say this as execute, it will come up. Now when I select this, see automatically your breakpoint has been triggered. Now it is knowing which radio button you have selected. The system is knowing that. So the user command, when you will be using, when you have at selection screen output only, at that case only you will be going to use that one. Now when I say purchase order details, see here, it will just remove that one. So the purchase order details, it is not allowing you to do that. See, this is how in the screen you have so many properties. In your screen you have so many properties like your color, display, group 1, group 2, input, invisible. You can make the screen as invisible, and length, the name, output, like that. So value, help, so whatever whatever you want, you can just make that as your with the help of your with the help of this one, you can go ahead and do that thing. So you usually get this 99%, you will be having only this type of requirement. You won't be getting any other requirements too. Now I'm just going to activate this one. So that's it. Now when I click on execute, automatically it will change this one. So this is how you have to work with your at selection screen output. So clear with this? Clear with this, guys? Any questions? Now let me go ahead and take your assignment.
Ravi, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yesterday in yesterday's class, you were using functions, right? Like even previously also you used some functions to print the output and all, no? So do we have a list of functions and their functionalities like somewhere stored somewhere?
See, in SAP, if you take function modules, So we do have almost like 10,000 plus function modules are available. So it depends upon the requirement. So there are a numerous, because BAPI, so BAPI uses function module concept, IDOC uses function modules concept. So IDOC will also, web services, there is a concept called as web services. Web services uses the function modules only. So if I want to transfer the data, so there is a concept called as BAPI, again uses RFC function module only. So from function module we will be converting into RFC, and RFC we will be converting into BAPI. So function modules, RFC function modules, BAPIs, both, all these three uses your function modules, and idocs will uses your function modules, web services will uses your function modules. We do have a number of function modules that are, so if you ask me, I can't able to provide you that list. Based upon your requirement, you have to find out the right function module and you have to use that one. So we don't have that list of all those things. If in the same way, tables also we have almost like uh, 25,000 plus tables that are available in SAP, because SAP is going to support 125 plus business areas. Every business area will have its own function modules, own tables, own structures. So we can't, until and unless if you go into deep dive to your system and which module you are going to work, so in that you will be getting those function modules. I can tell you the generic what we are going to regressively used in your real time, that I can tell you that. But if you are asking me, I can't able to give you the list. So usually while when we are doing it also, if you want to find out any function module, we will be just go ahead and do our googling. So we have a site called as sap.scn.com, SAP SCN community, SAP SCN community. So this is the one. So in this you will be getting everything. Just you can go ahead and ask a question. So so function module for download. So downloading the data, let's say. So you will be getting so many relations, so many things. See, GUI download is one more function module. If I want to download XML data, or is there any function module to download the data into CSV format? So FM to download Unicode FM function module. I want to download the Unicode. So a download and upload function module. Function module or classes are also available. So like that, you will be getting so many things. I want to convert that into OLE standard data format, Excel OLE standard data format, or I want to convert the Excel into an internal table into APO server. So there is an APO module in SAP. So I want to place that file into my APO server. So now, so upgrading. So these are some of the things. So function module. So like that, you will be getting so many things. See here, how many things are there. So you have to go ahead and find out what is your right function module and you have to use that one. So usually we will be asking directly function module to download the data. To download the data, we will just say SAP ABAP. So here you will be getting your data. See again, answers.sap.com is also the community only. The blogs.sap.com is also a community. So internal table into an Excel file. By default, when you use this, it will always download whether it will be a text data or your CSV data. But you want to see in your Excel file, there is one more function module. You have to use that. So what is that? So here they have used this ASC format, but they want that in your Excel format. They want that in my Excel format. So see, I have used F4 underscore file name for your at selection screen on value request. There is one more function module, KD underscore get file name on F4. KD underscore get file name on F4. There is one more function module which you can able to open your selection screen, which you can able to open your selections, your dialog, my computer dialog box. Sorry. So this is also one more function module that will be gets used. So depends upon your requirement, you have to find out your right function module and you have to use that one. So if let's say for example, let's if you are learning something new which is not there in your SAP community, you can go ahead and create your own block also. You can go ahead, so that's where you can go ahead and sharing your knowledge. So this is one important thing. My blocks are also there. I have almost like 15 to 16 blocks. So if you have more blocks, that it will create a more impact on your resume also. You can just say I have created these many blocks, but don't write the same thing which is there in SAP community, so SAP will reject that. If you are writing the same thing which is there in SAP community, SAP will check that. It will go for a review and it will just tell you that it's already there. But if you don't find anything, you can also ask a question also. So the community people who are there, they will just go ahead and respond with whatever the solutions what they have find out. So if you're not getting anything, you can just ask your question. 90% it will be there. And there is one more thing called as your what is this? There is one more thing where you can raise your incidents uh, directly to SAP also. Directly to SAP also, you can go ahead and raise your incidents. So that link, what is that? What is that? What is that? Yeah. So support.sap.com. So this is one more link, support.sap.com. So if you go here also, you can just go ahead and log in. So you can directly log on with your user ID as well as your password. You can directly log on. So or your company will be just providing your user ID and password to your company, or your client will also provide your user ID and password to log on to that system too. Okay. So here you have to provide that, or you can just use your. So in SAP, you do have two types of users. One is your P user and one is your S user. One is your P user and one is your S user. So S user ID, you will be getting it when you are when you are working for a project, or from your company, with the help of your official email IDs. Official email IDs that will be gets created by your SAP security team. So security team will create this as user IDs. P user IDs with the help of your Gmails and everything. If you want, you can just go ahead. So S user ID will have more privileges and everything when compared to your P user IDs. So now with the help of your S user ID, you can just go ahead and raise your incident to SAP. Like in your Oracle, if you want to directly speak with your Oracle, or if you want to raise it to Oracle directly, you will be directly raising to Oracle, right? In the same way, you can directly raising it. If you can't able to get the data with your community, then you will be going and raising with your SAP, this one. So you will be going to rise with your directly with your SAP. So first of all, you need have to analyze this and you have to find out that one. Then only you have to go ahead and rise it to SAP. Till that time, never ever rise it, because if you can't if I mean if SAP, there are so many tickets with your same example that will be provided. First, go ahead and check in your community, or go ahead and check in your SAP tool. So SAP support.com, in that also you can just go to your incidents, or you will be having something called as your KBA notes. So knowledge, something is there. Knowledge notes will be there. There you can also put your question, and you will be getting out the list of all the items that are matching with that word. So you can go ahead and find out over there too. You can go ahead and find out over there too. So, and then you can just implement. If you're unable to find out with all the possible ways, then raise it to SAP. Then only raise it to SAP, or else you don't go ahead and raise it to SAP. And remember that SAP will not provide any custom solutions. So what if you are designing any custom solutions, in that if you are using the standard, then SAP will help you with that. If you're completely writing with your custom, then SAP will not support you. SAP will not support you. Remember that. So it will always tell that this is your own custom solution. So I can't able to support. So only the standard details so you will be using. So that's the main reason. Mostly when you are writing the code, we will always prefer to write the entire code with the standard. So till now I didn't go into that deep dive. So right now we are using the right commands and everything to display the data. But going forward, so going down the line, maybe today is Tuesday, right? Going down the line, that is from Thursday, yeah, Thursday or Friday, you are going to start it off using your function modules, and then we are going to start consuming the standard function module to display the data automatically. To display the data automatically. So like that. So you will be having these notes and everything. First, you have to check that, and if not, then you have to go ahead and raise that. So we don't have any other option. Just Google it. Google it. But you will be for 100 questions, 99 questions, you will be getting an answer. You will be getting an answer. Okay, so clear?
Yeah, yeah. And which is the T code to check the function, the code?
You will be knowing that. So the function modules, the transaction code, once you go into the function modules, you will be getting that. Hold on for
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so assignment I'll be going to give you tomorrow, as we already as we are already running out of the time. So before I wind up for the session, any other questions? Okay, so I'll be considering it as no questions. Let me stop the recording.